A month ago, I turned 30, and like every 30-year-old, I decided that I would have a quarter-life crisis, and so I did what anyone in my position would do. I decided that I would play every main Final Fantasy title and document it for the internet. I have just finished my first ever playthrough of Final Fantasy VI. I chose Final Fantasy VI, one, because I don't know anything about it, I've never played any of the old Final Fantasy games, and I wanted to play a game that really defined what Final Fantasy is today. And when people talk about the most iconic Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy VI is going to come up on that list. I've got pages of notes. I'm going to go character by character in the order of worst to best of the characters that I like, and then going to discuss some miscellaneous points about the game and go into what I really liked about this game and the criticisms that I have of it. And I'm literally going to be doing this for every single Final Fantasy game. So I know I'm new here and all, but I think this is the moment where I tell you to subscribe. My least favorite character in this game is King Edgar, and if he is not your least favorite character, then I have some questions. So, you know, when we meet him, we find out he's a little bit of a womanizer, which is already like bleh, but like, okay, fine, sure. But when you're exploring Figaro, you can go talk to this little girl who will sit here and tell you that King Edgar told her that they could be together when she's just a little bit older. It was at that moment that I knew King Edgar was gonna be at the bottom of my list and stay there. But if I had to try to put my empathy hat on for King Edgar, he was left to run an entire kingdom on his own right after his father passed. And I do find it interesting that he and his brother took a completely different path to cope with their father's passing. Okay. What's another positive thing I could say about King Edgar? I really loved using his chainsaw ability. Thanks for that. And he was the only member in Kefka's tower that had the silence ability, which was really great for part of the final boss fight. That's about all I've got. Other than that, you can croak. My second least favorite character is Setzer. We met him through a kidnapping. Enough said. He's above Edgar because at least he had an airship. I do think he was maybe slightly better fleshed out as a character once we got to the second part of the game and we got to see a little bit more of his backstory. I liked the idea of the slot mechanic with Setzer, but I hated it in practice. I got to the point where I can pretty much every single time get all three things in the slot to line up, but my god was it annoying when I didn't. I don't like characters based on luck. It's the same reason I don't like Joey Wheeler and Yu-Gi-Oh! Your whole deck is based on whether or not a dice roll works for you. Ew. But for most of the game for me, Setzer was just kind of there, and honestly, I appreciated that because I worry if he opened his mouth too much, I was just going to get more and more uncomfortable around him. I didn't even know whether I should include this next character in the ranking, but my third least favorite character is General Leo. Again, I don't know if this is just the sign of the times, but there is no good guy in a mob of chaos. You are still a high-ranking member of a group of people who oppresses others. I do have to say, at a certain point in the game, I was really worried that he was going to end up with Terra, and I was screaming at the screen, not if I have anything to say about it. But luckily, I was spared that because Kefka went ahead and got rid of him. I do have to say that while I wasn't a big General Leo fan, I did feel something when he passed, not because of his passing, but because of how brutal it was. I don't know if I was interpreting this correctly, but from what I saw, it looked like Kefka was literally just stomping him until he passed. And I remember in that moment thinking that I would love to see this scene in a remake. Because for me, Kefka taking out Leo was the moment I truly started to fear Kefka. The next character I'm going to be discussing is Umaro. I didn't get him because I didn't care. First off, I found it very disrespectful of the game that once you had Lock-in Celeste, you pretty much can just go to Kefka's tower. But like, there's all these incentives and backstories for rescuing the other characters, but Mog, it was just like, yeah, you could take it or leave him. How dare you do Mog like that? He is a valuable member of this team. I say that to say that I knew you could unlock this character in the game because when you talk to Mog, when you go and reconnect with him, he talks about there being a Yeti or abominable snowman, whatever, being around there. So I figured there was some character I could go get and have a part of my team. I just didn't care enough. Sue me. Along the same line, we have Go-Go. I found Go-Go on accident. I would have completely missed it if I hadn't mistaken the area where Go-Go exists for the dinosaur forest in the beginning, because I was trying to grind levels before going into Kefka's tower, and I thought the area where the beast that swallows you into its stomach was like dinosaur land, where you could like level up and grind more, but it wasn't. But I just so happened to fight this beast that sucks us into his stomach, and then there was a whole terrain and with employees inside of his stomach, and there's Go-Go just hanging out there, and then you battle him and then he becomes part of your team. Outside of that, we don't know much about Go-Go, but I enjoyed my time. I enjoyed the whole mimic ability, and he's slightly higher because I use him in one of my Magic the Gathering decks, and he comes in clutch. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but it is so crazy to me what you can miss in this game if you don't pay attention to the most minute details. Next up, we're going to talk about Realm. I'm fairly indifferent about Realm. I will say, as someone who loves playing Pictomancer in Final Fantasy XIV, I have respect for the paint ability, and I loved using her paint ability when it worked 1 out of 50 times. Somebody needs to get this girl a better brush or some better paints or something, because about 70% of the time when I would use her paint ability, it just failed. But when it worked, she did usually pull out some damage. I believe I used her the least out of everyone in the game. I didn't develop her magic abilities very much. She's just like a little girl who's a little whiny, and that's fine, but like that's not what I want to play as in a character. But let's please keep her away from King Edgar, okay? Coincidentally, right next to Realm is Strago, and I like Strago. At least I like him as a character that I get to use in my party. I liked his lore abilities, and I loved using him as a healer. It could go either way between him and Realm, because there was the part where he was like being brainwashed by Kefka's influence or whatever because he thought everyone was gone, and that was a little pathetic and sad. He's just an old man who loves his granddaughter, and you know, that's great. Now, y'all can judge me however much you want to for putting this character this high on the list, but my next character is Mog. And you better just be glad that I didn't put him in the #1 spot, because he is a Moogle. And I know I just got on Realm for missing her painting ability 70% of the time, but when Mog misses his dance, he stumbles, and it's cute. And Mog has pulled through several times with the Sunbathe ability that heals your whole party many a times. That has come in clutch for me. Or when you do one of his other dances and you just crit a hole in the floor and the enemy just sinks all in one fell swoop. King. And you know what? Mog doesn't need to do anything to prove himself except be a Moogle. Okay? That earns his stake on this team. Now next up we have Cyan. Now what Cyan gave me is my first real true emotional moment in this game. We had to sit here and watch Kefka poison the waters of Doma, and he runs and finds his entire family has drinking the poison and is no longer with us. I literally had to sit here and watch him pull his unalive child's body from the bed. And then if that wasn't enough, we have to accidentally stumble on a train that goes to the afterlife. And while we fight our way through and escape our own path to the afterlife, we see his family boarding the train to go to the afterlife themselves, and he says his goodbyes to his family. That got tears out of me, and for that reason, he is this high ranked on the list. I also think he's a pretty cool character. At the beginning, I really didn't like using him because his Bushido abilities in the beginning part of the game were pretty useless, but they were pretty clutch at the end part of the game. I also like him because he's a little bit of a nutcase. Another moment where I really felt for Cyan is in Act 2 when we find out that he's writing letters pretending to be a loved one of somebody in one of the towns. The person he was pretending to be had passed, and he wanted to spare the woman who was in that town the pain that he is suffering through every day of having to live without the people he loves the most. As I'm talking about this, Cyan might be a little higher in the ranking. This poor man. Next up in my ranking, we have Gao. Gao is hilarious, but Gao also makes me very sad because he is an abandoned child who has had to fend for himself. It took me forever to figure out how to actually recruit Gao to my party. He kept coming, and then no matter what I did, he was like, ow, and then he would leave, and I'm like, okay, well, how do I get you? And so I actually had to look it up, and I was like, oh, I have to give him meat. Okay. Gao was toward the bottom of my ranking until we meet his father, who is senile, and we help Gao get all dressed up to go meet his father and tell him that that's his son, and it doesn't really go well. Father denies him, says he doesn't have a son, and it broke my heart when everybody was sticking up for Gao, and Gao was like, it's okay, I'm glad that my father's happy. Because Gao, you deserve happiness too. Next on the list, we have Sabin, and I am very shocked that he is this high on the list because I don't usually like characters like this in video games. I don't typically go for the meathead muscle boy in a story. For example, this might piss a lot of y'all off. I hate Snow in Final Fantasy XIII. I don't get the hype. What do you all see in this man that I don't? But I really like Sabin, and I really feel for Sabin because when his father passed, it's like his whole life mission became about being stronger. And part of that desire to be stronger seems to come from a place of just wanting to protect the things and people that he cares about, to the point where this man is so strong he held up an entire house to save somebody he doesn't know. And like I said before, he and Edgar both dealt with the passing of their father very differently, and I don't think either path was wrong, but I personally appreciate that Sabin went out in the real world and got some real world experience. Also, from a gameplay standpoint, in the early game, his blitz abilities were everything. There was a good section in the game where all I had to do was use Rising Phoenix on any enemy and we were gonna win. So thanks for that, King. He was in my character that was almost always in my party. Now we are getting into the characters that I am absolutely obsessed with, and I need to make a disclaimer that it was so damn hard for me to put any of these characters above or below any of the other top 4 characters. The difference between how much I love any of these characters is literally minuscule, so don't come at me. Okay, don't. That being said, my fourth favorite character is Shadow. See, it just feels wrong even saying that because what do you mean Shadow was number 4? But yeah, he's number 4. The first thing that I want to say that I love about Shadow is that he just leaves when he feels like it. I truly believe that more people should just leave situations that they don't want to be in. Secondly, he has a Doberman. I love Dobermans. I've had Dobermans my entire life. Number 3, he's a ninja. That in itself brings his cool factor to a 10. And this may be a hot take, but I think that Shadow has the most character development out of any other character in this game. I'm actually really curious if you all agree on that point. Shadow represents the redemption arc in this game. He was a thief who abandoned his partner and he held on to that guilt for the rest of his life. But unlike General Leo, I feel like Shadow actually took ownership of the hurt and damage that he has caused. He didn't sit on a high horse and believe he was a good person just because he's being compared to a literal menace to society. We see him reiterate throughout the entire game that he doesn't feel like he's deserving of anything. So I did save him, thankfully, but I was very close to not. I have just learned when this game gives you an option, the obvious option isn't necessarily the option you want to pick because they wouldn't give you an option unless there was a reason for you to pick the non-obvious option. And so when we're escaping to the airship and it asks if I want to jump on the airship, I was like, wait a damn minute. If we were truly just meant to jump on the airship, it would just have the cutscene play of me jumping onto the airship. And so I selected no, but nothing happened. So I went back and selected it again. And then the second option became no, wait for Shadow. And that's when I knew. However, did it really freaking matter? Because he goes and just sacrifices himself in the end anyways. And I hurt. This is what I mean. He literally just helped take out the person who was causing oppression and devastation to the entire world, and he still did not feel like that excused him from the actions and harm that he has done in the past. He spent his entire life trying to atone for the bad things that he's done without any expectation of being forgiven for them. He wasn't doing all of these things to atone for his past in order to be accepted and feel free in his consciousness. He simply did it because he felt like he owed the world that, and then still felt like he owed the world his passing, which I don't agree, Shadow. Okay, I don't agree. Does that make me a Shadow apologist? Maybe. I don't care. He has a dog, and if a dog loves you, I don't know. You know why I don't think he should have sacrificed himself? Because what is Interceptor supposed to do now? Yeah, okay, you saved him from the tower crumbling, but now he has to sit here and live without his dad. Interceptor deserves better than that. Also, I did not piece this together in the game. I found it through the research I was doing for this video, but he's Realm's father. Once I saw that, it made sense because Interceptor took a liking to Realm. There were a couple like little dialogue moments that kind of hinted towards somebody who had a daughter there was a lot of stuff that was like weird and unresolved, and I was like, what does that mean? Now I'm understanding. Another reason you shouldn't sacrifice yourself, you have a daughter. But yeah, he sacrificed himself in the end because despite everything, he still felt like he wasn't worthy of a life. And that made me really sad. Now hold on, for this next character, I have to change cards. The next character is Locke. Look at this man. You can call me a simp all you want to, but that is my king. Let it be known that Locke is a treasure hunter, not a thief. Locke's arc in this game. Oh, Locke's story arc was damn near impeccable to me. You see from the beginning of the game that Locke is very protective of Tara, and everyone's like, what is the big deal about Tara? Tara has amnesia at the time, and you find out the reason he's so protective of Tara is because his love literally has amnesia from when she saved him from looking for a treasure, and he couldn't save her. She fell, she hit, she got amnesia, and then later on she came in and was out by the Empire, and then Locke kept her alive with this old man in his house by using a plant root. A little weird, Locke, a little weird. That was a moment where I was side-eyeing you a little bit. I think she should have to, like, consent to, keep, I don't know. I think having an unalived body in your house that's being watched by an old man is just slightly a little off. I don't know. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he's Locke. The whole game, Locke is just harboring guilt for not being able to save his love, Rachel. And the entire game, his mission is to find this treasure that will hopefully bring Rachel back to life. And when we finally find the treasure, which was a magicite for the Phoenix, it's cracked and broken. However, the Phoenix does grant Rachel a little bit of life to have one final conversation with Locke, and she tells Locke to let her go, that she's grateful to him, that he was amazing to her, and to find love elsewhere. And then you see the Phoenix rise up and she passes, and Locke is there with the closure that he's been searching for this entire game, but it didn't go how we thought it would. And you want to know what I was left with? Nothing but tears, alone in my apartment with my 2 cats. I don't think I deserved that, Locke. I don't think I deserved that. But Locke gets his redemption because at the very end of the game, when Kefka's tower is collapsing, she runs back because she drops Locke's bandana, which I will talk about in a second, and she is falling and he is able to save her before she falls to her doom. He couldn't save Rachel, but he saved Celeste. I want to know who was in the writer's room that day. I just want to have a chat. Speaking of Celeste, my double agent queen, she is my second favorite character in this game. First of all, I was just grateful for her runic ability in itself. Celeste was always in my team when she could be, and whenever a magic user wanted to come and try to fight us, best believe we weren't going to be affected at all because she was going to use her runic ability and we were going to be untouched. You're going to heal her 20 points every single time you try to hit us with magic, okay? What I also love about Celeste is that she's willing to do whatever needs to be done. She sat here and pretended to be an actress to go play a part in a play where she knew she was going to be kidnapped just so we could get an airship. That's queen behavior. It irritated me so much when Kefka tried to paint this picture that she betrayed the team. It irritated me even more that they believed it, but I could understand why they believed it because she is a bit of a double agent and they didn't know each other that well yet. But I didn't like the turmoil that caused between Celeste and Locke, okay? Locke was in my number 2 spot until we got to the second act of this game. You guys, I did not save Sid. He was sick and he said he wanted fish, so I kept going and getting fish and I kept bringing him back and the dialogue was changing up and down and he was getting better and then worse and then better and then worse and then better and then worse and I kept bringing fish, but ultimately he didn't make it. She had just started calling him granddad. She had just found family after the world was literally sent into turmoil and she doesn't even know that everyone else is alive. She thinks that it's literally just her and Sid left and then he's gone 10 minutes later after taking care of her for a year when she was in a coma. I'm exhausted. And then she goes outside to the peak of a mountain or the land or whatever and she looks like she's about to jump and here's what my naive brain thought. I thought she was gonna look over and she was considering jumping and then something was gonna come and remind her that she had hope and she was gonna keep going. No, she actually jumps. She attempts. Celeste, what are you doing, girl? I'm getting upset all over again. Well, thankfully, the jump didn't work, and then a seagull comes in, and it's wearing Locke's bandana, and she sees it, and that gives her the willpower to fight on, because she now knows that Locke is alive. Girl, we don't use permanent solutions to solve problems we don't even know if we have yet. Putting my anger to the side, this brought tears to my eyes just because I really connected with this moment in the story. This part of the story really symbolized what it looks like to be completely devoid of hope. I couldn't believe that within the span of 30 minutes of this game, we just watched the world go into ruin. We find out that Celeste has been in a coma for a year. We find out that Sid had been taking care of her for the entire year. They start calling each other granddaughter and granddad. Then all of a sudden Sid is just sick. And then we have to try to save him. And then we don't. And then she jumps. And then she finds out Locke is alive. And then she has hope again. Can I have a second to get up? Please. As painful as it was though, I'm actually glad I didn't save Sid because I went on YouTube and watched the alternative when I found out that you could. And I feel like you miss out on such an important part of not only Celeste's story, but of the game's story in general if you were to save Sid. But maybe I just enjoy pain. Oh, I totally forgot to mention before the world went into ruin, she stabbed Kefka. Iconic. Everybody else was doing all this hemming and hawing and she said, hey, Kefka, here's my sword. And she took care of business. I wish we would have aimed for a more vital organ, but you know what? At least she did something. And then at the very end of the game, when Kefka's tower is crumbling, she drops Locke's bandana and literally risks her life to grab it. And I know some people might play this game and say, oh, it's because she loves Locke so much. And of course, that's part of it. But for me, that bandana doesn't just represent Locke. It represents her finding hope again. If I had to put myself in Celeste's shoes, I wouldn't let go of that bandana for anything either, because to sacrifice that bandana feels like I'm sacrificing hope itself. And it's okay because Locke saved her. And now we have come to my favorite character in this game, Terra. And don't you worry, I will be talking about the menace to society as well. Let me just be positive for 5 more minutes. Terra's entire arc is about wanting to experience what it's actually like to love. This poor girl at the very beginning of the game is being brainwashed. Then she gets the crown taken off of her, and then she's taken by these people who she doesn't know, and she's told that she has to be the hope and savior of the world. And she agrees to it even though she doesn't even know who she is. And she has to bear the pressure of being a symbol of light for the entire world when she hasn't even identified who the heck she is yet. What do you mean? The world hates her because magic is incredibly feared, and we find out that she's half Esper. Here's where it became undeniable that Terra was going to be my favorite character in this game. After the world literally went to ruin, she immediately takes the mantle of being a mother figure to like a bajillion orphans. And when we come find her, she literally loses all willpower to fight on. She has found purpose in taking care of these children who all lost their parents due to Kefka's madness, and she loses the will to fight, and all she cares about is being a mother figure to these people. And the game is so sick and twisted because then this monster thing, I forget the name, comes into the town and threatens the children, and she comes in and you have to fight this thing as Terra, and no matter what attack you use, it does 0 damage to symbolize that Terra has literally lost the will to fight. Again, I just want to have a chat with the people in charge of making this game. The other party members come in and save her, and then we have to leave her because she's like, I'm not joining the fight. I'm not joining up with y'all. I don't have it in me. But then we come back and Terra finds out that one of the orphans is pregnant. This monster thing comes back again, and then we get defeated by it as party members, and then Terra comes in full Esper Diva madness and slays. She said, you will not hurt my children, and she takes care of the monstrosity of evil. The way I was screaming and running around the room like, are you joking? This is my girl. I love that this game had terrifying love through motherhood and not from a man. Thank you for that. In that moment, she realizes that it's not enough to just hide away and take care of the children to protect them. She has to give them a better tomorrow. She sees what it is like to truly love somebody, and now she fights from a place of love instead of fear. Beautiful. If you can't tell, Terra is my girl. Terra's my girl. And then because she experienced what it truly feels like to love, she had enough humanness to still live even when magic was rid of the world after Kefka's defeat. And now we get into madness, because we can't talk about Final Fantasy VI without talking about the town fool himself, Kefka. I'm not talking about him last because he's ranked #1 on the list. I am talking about him last because he can't be in the ranking. Because on one hand, he would be at the bottom because what an awful, awful, terrible person. But on the other hand, he played his job as a villain beautifully. And as somebody who respects and enjoys a good villain, I can't put him at the bottom for doing his job and doing it very well. The thing about Kefka, because I knew going into this game that he was regarded as one of the best Final Fantasy villains. When you hear about Final Fantasy villains, you're going to hear about Kefka and Sephiroth. But from the beginning of the game, I'm like, what is the big threat here? Okay, he has Magitech. Who cares? And yes, he has no moral compass and he's willing to do anything and he just believes in pure chaos and he'll just sit here and do whatever. But like, he doesn't have any threat factor about him. I believe we fought him twice and we just clapped him both times. So I'm like, what is the big deal? And then I found out what the big deal was. I will say, even when he poisoned the waters of Doma, I still wasn't getting that threat factor from him. I'm like, oh, you're a coward. You're a loser. And then even when we saw him draining the Espers and discarding them like they're literal trash, I still was like, why aren't we doing anything? Let's go take out the clown. But then he learned what Magicite was, and it was all hell after that. This man took so many different Espers Magicite, it was unreal, including baby Espers. He took Magicite from baby Espers. And the moment that I truly started to fear Kefka was when he took out General Leo. Because even though he was just a 2D pixel sprite on my screen, I felt the menacing lack of morality, just awful monstrosity of a person that Kefka was in that moment. I'm not making a whole section talking about the Emperor, so I'll insert this here. You're a dummy and you're a loser and you're a geek. You thought that you could tame somebody who literally doesn't care about life itself. You thought he was going to stay loyal to you. You thought you were the one in charge. You got exactly what you deserved, dummy. I remember when Kefka turned on the Emperor, I was literally just sitting there like, what do you want me to do about it? You befriended a hyena and then are surprised when it bit you in your face. Am I supposed to feel sorry for you? And then Kefka uses the power of the Warring Triad to literally break the world apart. The villain literally won. And in that moment, I was just like, how do we win? Even if we somehow beat Kefka, we are still left with a world in ruin. The impact of Kefka is left on the world forever. His philosophy, which is that everything dies, so what's the point of it living? Here's what I need to understand. Some people were in my comments on Instagram saying that he was right. And I have to ask you all, do you need therapy? Yes, you need therapy. He's right. You agree with him? Yes, everything will probably end, but that doesn't mean that existence itself isn't worth experiencing. I need all the Kefka apologists to go seek help. But very easy to see why Kefka is regarded as one of the best villains in Final Fantasy. He was terrifying by the end, and I hated him every step of the way. A couple other standout moments from this game. I hate Zozo. I was trained through the game that I am safe as long as I am in a town. So why am I going into a town? People are just clapped on the floor and I'm being attacked from left and right by all of these strong enemies. I don't know if I was just under leveled, but oh my god, that was my least favorite part of the game. I was exhausted. I literally barely survived it, but I was happy that we got to see my second favorite godlike being in the Final Fantasy universe, Rama, for about 5 minutes before he said, peace out, guys. Here's my power, though. Save the world, okay? Another thing I would like to share is that Ultros is hilariously annoying. He's just like this mosquito that doesn't go away, but I loved every time we saw him because he's just like a pest. And when we see him end up at the Coliseum as nothing but like the receptionist or whatever, hilarious. Also, I want to touch on the fact that you can miss really important plot points, characters, weapons, all sorts of things if you don't pay attention to minute details or if you aren't just lucky enough to stumble upon them. Part of me really enjoys that because you really have to immerse yourself in the world, experience, explore, and find things. But also, like, there were some things like I didn't skip around. I did explore, and I missed probably so much in this damn game. Another standout moment was the play. The play was one of my favorite parts of the story. I just thought it was really well done. I loved the little fight scene when Locke fell down. I loved seeing Celeste sing. I love having to remember the lines. I thought the play was a really fun moment in the story. And my last miscellaneous point is that I would like to take personal responsibility for this team that I am not a part of for bringing baby espers to the people who have been hunting them for forever. No, because we need to wake this up. What do you mean the Emperor, after causing tyranny for however many years, is like, guys, we need to just stop the fighting? And you guys are like, you know what? I believe him. And then you go and you find these baby espers and you're like, guys, the Empire is good now. The Emperor would really like to speak to you. He really sees our side now. Guys, he's not hunting you. It's safe now. I want to only be mad at Kefka for taking the magicite of the baby espers, but I can't be mad at a dog for barking. I predominantly blame the returners for thinking that it was a good idea, one, to even give the Emperor the time of day, and two, sit here and bring babies to the doorstep of the people who have been hunting and draining their power. And then Kefka being put into a prison. Come on, guys, it's a facade. You should have known it was a facade when the Emperor asked you, well, what do you think we should do with Kefka? We value your opinion. Because I chose to kick him out. I said, oh, what should we do with Kefka? We should take him out. And then the Emperor goes, well, let's not get hasty a little bit. At that point, you should have known it was BS. Those espers' lives are on your hands just as much as they're on Kefka's. You're all dumb. And I don't want to have to insult you like that because I love a lot of you, but you're dumb. You're stupid. You're ignorant. You were unqualified to manage the lives of those baby espers. Now we're gonna get into what I loved about the game. Number one, I love that this game is not handed to you. I feel like with modern titles, games are just handed to you on a silver platter. It is so easy to figure out what you do next. The mini-map tells you exactly where to go. In this game, I love that you have to piece things together. You have to speak to people because you can miss stuff if you don't speak to people. When you go into a town, you better talk to every single person. And there are so many great moments in this game that happen in small moments of dialogue with the characters. For example, there's a house in one of the towns where there's this old lady, and when you go in there, she asks you, are you loyal to the Empire? And if you say yes, she says fine. But if you say no, then this Empire soldier comes out and you have to fight him. And then you fight him, and then the old lady says, maybe you young people will save us or figure it out. And then when you go and visit that house throughout the rest of the game, she literally tells you, don't give up, like you're young, like you can do this, like whatever. And like little moments like that show you just how oppressed people were. Like this game does such a good job at immersing you in what it looked like to be like taken over by the Empire. I would also like to discuss, was it Narsh? No, it wasn't Narsh. I forget what the town was that like tried to remain neutral. Was it Kalingen? I don't know. It was one of the towns that tried to stay neutral and they were like, we're not gonna get involved because we have an alliance with the Empire and we don't want to get caught up in your mess. You look dumb. I don't want to call you dumb because I can't blame you for doing what you think you needed to do to survive. But just because you are silent, just because you don't do anything does not mean that you are excused from menacing people. I also think that the battle system of this game is an absolute blast. Oh my God, so fun because it's like turn-based. I know there's a name for it, but it's like turn-based, but it's not turn-based because you're not taking turns. You have to like execute your attacks in like a certain amount of time. Otherwise you'll get hit more. It was like everything I love about turn-based, but also everything that I love about like more modern styles of like battle systems or whatever, like put into one. And I think it still holds up super, super well today. I had a great time being in fights, and I usually hate trash mobs and things like that, but there were times where I was like, let someone come and fight me. Somebody come square up so I can mess y'all up with my spells. I thought the game had good pacing, at least the way that I played it, but like the pacing's kind of up for you because realistically the second act of the game can be like a split second if you don't go and save all of the other characters and get the whole team back together. But why would you play this game and not get the whole team back together? So the pacing can be kind of subjective based on how you played the game, but like if you play the game how I think a normal person would, I think the pacing of this game is really good. There wasn't any moments where I was like, oh my God, can we please hurry up? This is dragging on and on. I'm sick of it, as I've experienced in many other games. Another good thing about this game is that the characters that I really love. And I'll talk about what I mean by that when I get into my criticism criticisms of the game. Another thing I liked about this game is that there were real stakes and real consequences. We lost. I don't know if this is the general consensus of the game, but we didn't just lose in the first act of the game. I feel like we still lost at the end because yes, we got rid of the source of the person who was causing all of this mayhem, but the mayhem he left behind is everlasting. There's a whole group, there's a whole species that is now extinct. Magic is now gone from the world. The world is literally in parts sectioned up in a way that it wasn't before. That doesn't just go away. And I think this game did such a good job at capturing both hope and despair beautifully, and what it means to hope in a time where you have every reason to only give into despair. I do have just a few criticisms, but they're pretty minor, don't come for me. As I said before, the characters that I'm obsessed with, I am truly obsessed with, but there is half the cast that I just don't care about. And in every Final Fantasy game I have played, I am used to absolutely loving at least 90% of the characters. And part of that is just due to the characters themselves. Like, I don't like Edgar, I don't like Setzer, there was nothing you were gonna be able to do about that. But I think the other reason it's hard to love the entire cast is because the cast is so large. Y'all, there are so many characters in this game. Like, there is no way to give each one of these characters full respect, though I do think the game did as good of a job as you can. And again, maybe some of these characters were more likable during the time of this game's release, but through a 2026 lens, some of these characters are just kind of irredeemable. My other criticism of this game is that there are a couple moments, just a couple, where it was a little unbelievable. The main one that comes to mind was the whole facade of the Emperor saying, "Oh, we're good now, we don't want to fight." I just don't believe that the returners would be that naive and just be that forgiving of the Emperor that quickly and lead baby espers to him just because of one good conversation. I just don't believe that. I found that to be a little bit like, really? And I would say that my last criticism, and I don't even really know if this is a criticism, maybe just a statement, is that most of the boss fights, if not all of them, were pretty easy. In fact, I found quite a few of the mobs to be harder than just about any boss I experienced. And I feel like that's common in the Final Fantasy games I've played. I feel like the final boss is always way easier than just some of the lesser bosses or even some of the lesser mobs. And I don't even know if I'm really asking for them to be more difficult, but it just kind of increases the stake of like, oh, we're fighting this like godlike being if he did more than just shoot some heavy hitting spells at us that we had to heal through and then hit him back. I don't know. I just felt that the actual Kefka boss fight was a little bit simple. But other than that, I absolutely loved this game. I was really nervous that I wouldn't feel the magic that the people who played this game when it originally came out would feel, because my experience with Final Fantasy games is, you know, having voice acting and these super hyper realistic graphics. And I don't really care about hyper realistic graphics at all. One of my favorite video games is Persona 5, and there are several other video games that I love that are not hyper realistic at all that are like high up on my list of best video games I've ever played, but it's just a different experience than I was used to playing Final Fantasy in particular. I was worried that like the emotional impact wouldn't hit me as much. I was worried I wouldn't be as invested in the characters as other Final Fantasy games, but that simply wasn't true. I was incredibly immersed into this world. I was invested in all of the characters that I really liked, and I really cared about the plot, and I really felt the tension between Celeste and Locke. I felt the yearning of Terra. I felt everything that I think I was supposed to feel throughout this game. I cried a couple times, and it just goes to show you that good storytelling will trump any kind of like realism and graphics any day. So there were a couple people when I said this on Instagram that were like, "What, you don't like to read?" And I would just like to say you're dumb, because I read all the time. You see all these books behind me. But when I'm playing a video game, and when I'm playing a certain type of video game where I'm used to experiencing a certain type of thing, it's okay if I don't compare it to a completely different type of medium. It's kind of how like I usually watch the dubbed version of anime, or I will just read the manga, because when I'm watching TV, I don't want to sit here and have to actively read a screen. I'd rather just read the book. So when I'm playing a video game, I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy reading a Final Fantasy game when I'm used to just being able to, you know, hear a Final Fantasy game and see a Final Fantasy game. But all that being said, I enjoyed it very much. It's very easy to see how Final Fantasy VI is one of the games that gave Final Fantasy the recognition and name that it has. And I'm truly, truly glad that I got to experience it alongside people who played it when it first came out. And also I saw that I've inspired other people to start playing it, and we played it together. And so I want to thank everybody who has been a part of this journey. I hope you'll stick around for the other Final Fantasy games and the games that I play outside of Final Fantasy. I'm also building a Magic the Gathering Commander deck deck around my favorite character of each Final Fantasy game that I complete. I've already built my Terra deck and I've posted it over on my Instagram. On my Instagram, I give my first impressions and thoughts as I play these games, so make sure you're following me over there. And make sure you're subscribed here for more gaming and manga, Magic the Gathering, you know, all the nerdy stuff that we all love. I look forward to sharing and experiencing more games with you all. And with that being said, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.